All right, Mr. Gray, we should move things along. We are.
Yeah, we're a little bit over. Okay, so Korean, do you want to get started or do you want me to start with our topic for today?
Let me get. Actually, yeah, no. Why don't you get us started?
All right, well, today's topic is politics, the political prerogative. Do politics belong in games? And I'm just going to ask you a simple question. Do you think politics belong in games?
We had this discussion last night, so yes.
I am going to 100% agree. I know a lot of people hate politics in their gaming, and they're like, "Oh, keep politics out of games." And I definitely and feel that way sometimes. But in all honesty, I really think that um, games are art, and politics are very much a part of art. I mean, art is expressing ourselves and what we think and our ideas. And if what are politics if not our ideas of what we think, how we think things should be. So I'm going to agree with you there. I definitely think that politics do have a place in games. Probably not every game. I don't think you're going to need politics in a game like Fall Guys. There's definitely, should be kind of a safety zone there. But but I definitely do think they do belong. However, as with a lot of times with politics, it can lead to censorship. So I'm going to be covering the censorship aspect of politics and gaming. So, first of all, what is censorship? Well, censorship is when you basically say, I am not going to allow this in the game, or I am not going to uh, allow people to do certain things or see certain things in games. And a lot of times when we think of censorship, the first thing we possibly think of is free speech. And typically in games, you're not going to see a lot of free speech censorship. You might see some self censorship of certain producers. Maybe they don't want certain, they don't want to alienate certain audiences, so they self censor. However, we are seeing a lot more censorship recently, particularly due to influence from China. I mean, obviously, we saw the Blitzchung incident with Hearthstone, where he came out and said Hong Kong, was it revolution of our times and all that, and ended up getting a ban and ended up losing his prize money. Now, after that, I actually ended my WoW account and I sent an email to Blizzard saying that the reason I was doing it is because I did not agree with their policy or their decision, rather. I did not agree with their decision, and so I would be banning myself from the game as long as he was banned in an act of solidarity. Now, I went through the rules after they did this, and actually, they had a list of rules, and it says, like, oh, for this violation, this is the punishment. For this violation, this is the punishment. And at the very bottom, there was basically one last rule, and it said, if the person acts in a way that Blizzard feels reflects badly on them, they can ban a player and take away their prize money. Now, this was the only one where both taking away the prize money and a ban was an option. Most of them were shorter bans, but they keep the prize money or a reduction to prize money. This is the only one that had a ban and reduction of prize money. So the fact that they went straight to the strictest punishment for me just told me, like, yeah, this is corrupt, and so that's why I had to do it. Now, in all honesty, if he had done that and they had given him a ban but let him keep the money, or if they had ultimately, what I would have preferred is they gave him a warning and said, hey, we don't want politics on this platform. We want to keep it focused on the game. Here's a warning. Don't do it again. If you do it again, we'll ban you. I might have been on Blizzard's side there. But the fact that they just went straight for the most extreme thing, similar to this Hollow Live thing, where they just straight up ban somebody for it, uh, to me, that's just extreme oppression. So, yeah, I was definitely against that. We also see it in games like Devotion, which is a Red Candle game, a game made by a Taiwanese company. And in Devotion, the game got great reviews. Even in China, people love this game. And then one day, somebody walked over to a wall, and there's kind of uh, a banner or a poster on the wall, And if you read the poster, it said something along the lines of Winnie the Pooh idiot or something like that. And I mean, this is just a background image. This is not an important thing. You know, if you're the kind of person who likes to go through Assassin's Creed and look at all the individual cobblestones on the street, this is that
Yep.
kind of thing where somebody noticed it and they posted it up, and then suddenly the game got review bombed to the point where Steam even took it down. Or I don't think Steam took it down. I think Red Candle themselves took it down and said they were going to change the image because it was a placement image, and they just forgot to replace it with something else later. Um, so something like that, or for instance, in Animal Crossing, where people can kind of create their own customized stuff, or, and people were posting free Hong Kong and that sort of thing. So the entire game of Animal Crossing got delisted in China. You can still buy secondhand copies on the gray market, but you can't officially buy Animal Crossing in China anymore. So these are examples of free speech, and we're typically seeing them in China. I'm sure you would see them in other countries as well, but I think China is probably the biggest country that has a large gamer player base, whereas a lot of these maybe smaller countries are typically poorer countries, that are run by dictators and whatnot. So free speech is definitely an issue that we see. Another thing that we see as terms of censorship is symbolism. So Crian and I were actually talking a little bit about this yesterday and on an unrelated thing, but in the game Wolfenstein, the new Wolfenstein, in Wolfenstein, you play as a character who's fighting Nazis in an alternate universe. And in every version of the game, you're fighting Nazis. Well, in the German version of the game, you're not fighting Nazis. You're fighting this group that has a red flag with this weird triangle symbol on it. And their leader looks remarkably like Adolf Hitler without the mustache. So they basically just edited the hairstyle on the guy, and they're like, "Oh, no mustache. You clearly can't recognize him. That's their leader, though." Now, and I get it because Germany obviously their history is a very sensitive topic, and they've had rules where they've banned any kind of memorabilia or any of that kind. So I kind of get it there, but at the same time, that brings up the question of those who don't learn from the past are doomed to repeat it, right? So it's one of those things where we should we there is a past, but we don't want to see it, so that's another form of censorship. And the last form of censorship is probably the most controversial, and that is just kind of local sensitivities and things that make people uncomfortable. So for example, games like Dead or Alive or Senran Kagura, these games that are notorious for what people like to call jiggle physics. A lot of people don't feel that that's appropriate, and so they want to censor these games. You should desexualize women. Um, Now, on the other hand, though, there's always the argument that it's not just sexualizing women. I mean, if you look at the guys in these games, I mean, come on, 6 packs, 8 pack abs for crying out loud. I mean, these guys are jacked. So I mean, in a way, it kind of sexualizes everybody. But also in the case of Senran Kagura and another game, Omega Labyrinth Zero, the girls in those games are typically very, very young. So in Japan, in Senran Kagura, the characters are, if you look at the characters' ages, it says, 14, 15, 16. If you look at the American version, it says, 18, 20, 22. So basically, the game is exactly the same. They just changed the ages of the characters. So you have this 22-year-old who's still in high school, but it's because obviously in America they have very different views on what is appropriate for that sort of thing. And then, of course, also things like violence. For instance, the game Manhunt was banned in Australia. Australia is pretty notorious for their censorship rules. So violent games will not be released there. And then also, actually, Fallout 3 was initially banned in Australia as well because of its drug use, which is kind of interesting because in Fallout, you can use the drugs. It'll give you a temporary boost, like maybe your VATS recharges faster or something like that. But your character actually can become addicted to it, at which point each time you use it, the effect lasts for a shorter amount of time. But also, if you don't use it, then your character gets debuffs. So there's a level of addiction there as well. Unfortunately, I mean, but then again, you can just go to a doctor and say, "Hey, cure me," and you're cured. So it does kind of not do that. So really, the question is censorship in other forms of art. For instance, books. Would we censor those sort of things? Would we say you can't have this in there or you can't have that in there? Um, would we censor those things? And so in games, should we censor those? Should we say, hey, you can't have this? I'm falling off the camera here. Should we say, so in games, should we say what people can and cannot see? Or should it be like other forms of art where it's just say, hey, this form of art is not for me. I don't want to see it, but we should leave it and allow other people to see it. So that was probably a longer description than I really needed. But Korean, yeah, want to discuss censorship a little bit, or
Sure, sure, sure. I mean, we talked a bit about this yesterday. Um, I know you are against censorship,
100%?
and I think, as bad as this is to say, I think certain things need to be censored. Um,
I went too far the other way.
no, no, I repositioned your
Oh,
video.
okay.
So you should be you're looking at an old image. So right now you're dead fine. You don't need to move.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, I think certain things should be censored. I made the argument to Adam last night after work that we need to certain things need to be forgotten in order for us to move forward. Adam literally just said the opposite thing. A few minutes ago he said, we have to remember the past, in order to really understand where we came from. I
Two perspectives.
Yes, yes.
Doesn't mean one's right and one's wrong.
All right. So to sum it up for everyone, what is your summary for your thoughts about politics and gaming?
Me?
Yes.
Well, from a censorship perspective, I am 100% against it. Now, I do understand the need for certain things. Like, okay, so for instance, in a game like Fall Guys, you do have younger audiences playing it. So I would say there are things that you should not include. Um, for instance, you wouldn't want anything that involves, say, nudity or things like that. Now, and this is a cultural thing too. You go over to, like, say, France, or you go to Europe, and they have a very different policy on nudity than, say, America does. For instance, Australia, I think, is a little more lenient towards nudity, but very against violence. America's the complete opposite. Nudity, bad. Violence, awesome. Right? So I think there is definitely a cultural element there. Um, but I am of the view that any art should be available to those who wish to seek it. Um, and so, like, so I'll give you an example. So, for instance, the Dead or Alive games, like I said, are uh, known for their jiggle physics, right? Okay, um, bouncing ladies. Now, there are definitely a lot of groups out there who are trying to say, "Hey, you shouldn't make this game. It's sexist. It's bad. It's not appropriate." Um, from my perspective, I would say don't edit that out because there's people who want that. But I would say we need. So here's my view. I think the industry shouldn't censor itself. I think it should expand itself to include more audiences because it is very male dominated and that sort of thing right now. Um, and a lot of times I think when we get into politics, a lot of times people are saying we need to take this away, and I'm against the let's take this away from this group thing. I'm very much let's give this to that group thing. So I would definitely say, like, for example, uh, have you heard of a game Hayato Boyfriend?
No.
Okay, so typically when we think of dating simulators, you're thinking of these games that were really popular in Japan among these kind of nerdy guys, where you can date all these different girls and try to pick the best waifu or whatever. And traditionally, this was very male dominated. We're now actually seeing a lot of dating simulators that are catered to women, that are designed for women, that you can date a bunch of different boys in it. They have ones that are catering to lesbians, where you're a woman trying to date other women. Hayato Boyfriend is your all the boys are represented by different birds. So you're trying to date like a pigeon or
Oh, I do
a
know
hawk or
that.
something like that. Yeah, so it's just this quirky little thing. So that's kind of my view on it is don't take away games from people. You know, still you can still have those traditional kind of dating simulators, and if you don't like that, you don't have to buy that. But I do think the industry should expand and include games for people that don't like that and they want this instead. So I'm kind of more of a expand your horizons person, not limit your horizons person. I think is the way I would word it.
That's perfect. That is a good way, and I have to say I totally agree with you on this point. I think games definitely have to become more inclusive, regardless of whatever your flavor is, what you like, what you don't like. Games should give you the opportunity to play the games the way you like them to.
So you want to go on your topic?
Shorten my topic a little bit today
Yeah, I
because we
went a little
are.
over. Sorry.
No worries. We are a fair bit over. I think this will definitely be the longest episode we've ever done.
Record.
All right, so let me remove my news and input in my topic. So, um, as far as today's topic goes, we were going to talk about politics, right? And politics and gaming. I viewed this topic in the sense of ideologies or political ideologies in games. So, if you're a younger listener or someone who's not familiar with politics, generally speaking, in the world, there are two kinds of ideologies, generally speaking, liberal and conservative, and there are lots of variations in between. Um, in games I have played, I'm a liberal person myself, so don't hate me. Um, I generally play liberal-leaning games, but I still find, I mean, I've been playing games since I was 6 years old. I'm turning 38 this year, so in the last 30 years of games, games sort of are leaning more and more liberal, which is goes literally back to what Adam just said, is he wants games to include more things. But at the same time, I would agree with Adam that like certain political philosophies or ideologies, liberals tend to promote, same-sex marriage and LGBTQ things and some stuff. I mean, even in Taiwan, Taiwan is very open, very democratic, but there are still loads of people where we live that are just, I wouldn't say closed-minded, but they're uncomfortable with someone being gay or someone being lesbian. Um, they're uncomfortable with that lifestyle and talking about it, and especially in doing that in a game. If you look at the picture next to me over here, uh, Gone Home was a fantastic game. It is the first story game I've ever played in my life, where it's pure story, not a lot of mechanics or mechanisms, and it was the game that literally just made me cry in the end of the story. So, before I talk about the spoiler, please skip forward a minute if you've never played Gone Home or you intend to play it, because I will spoil the ending of this game. So in this game, you're a girl, you come back to her house, and you're exploring your house, discovering who you are and what happened. And in the end of the game, you find out that, oh, actually you're lesbian and you're in love with this other girl, and this caused a whole lot of conflict in your family. Um, and the story and the way it sort of ends in the end is just so wonderful. And I told all my friends, like, hey, play this game. Uh, but like one of my really good friends, Hans, I mention him sometimes on streams because we will play Trine 4 tonight. Um, he he's just not comfortable with this kind of game, and I'm like, for me, I feel like regardless of you know whatever you like, whatever is your sexuality, pardon my English, um, this is a game that should be played by everyone. That being said, if you're not comfortable, I understand. But I mean, let me ask you this, Adam. I mean, do you think there
Yes.
should be a different Gone Home version for each person?
Absolutely not. I mean, for me, I feel like sometimes the purpose of art is to make us uncomfortable. I mean, it is to force us to think outside of our comfort zone and acknowledge new ideas. I mean, that's a big part of art is challenging our preconceptions. And I think changing that would I mean, okay, so you said that part of it is that she had conflict in her family because of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
You take that out, it completely changes the whole point of the game. I mean, I myself, one of my sisters is a lesbian. So I mean, like I think these people, not 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 these people. I think everybody's story is worth hearing, and we need to relate to people. And taking that out and censoring it, I mean, I think you're really kind of hurting yourself more than anybody by doing that. Um, on a personal note, like for me, one thing uh, I know, like traditionally, there's kind of been an overrepresentation of white male protagonists. Um, and so now we're seeing like a lot more people of color and female protagonists. Aloy and Horizon Zero Dawn, or Laura Croft. Obviously she's been around for a while, but they very kind of revamped her and whatnot. But this is one thing that I completely don't agree with a lot of times, where people say like, "Oh, I need," like you see some gamers and they say, "Oh, I don't want a female protagonist. I can't relate to that." And for me, I think that's just ridiculous. Because I mean, for example, like I can watch a movie and I'm a white guy, but the protagonist might be a black man. And okay, maybe I can't relate to him as a black man, but I can relate to him as a coworker. I can relate to him as a brother. Maybe uh, if I ever have children, I can relate to him as a father. There's so many things that I can relate to this character on, that the color of his skin is so minor that like, like we definitely have more in common than we have not in common. And I think something like this Gone Home thing, like you were saying, you didn't even realize that this character was lesbian until the end. You were relating to this character on a completely different level. If you get to that point and you're like, oh, she's a lesbian, I can't relate to her anymore, I think that's kind of ridiculous. So I do think that they should have games like this that kind of challenge people's perceptions and then give them that kind of twist ending at the end. It's kind of like, oh wow, I hadn't considered that or thought of it that way. So no, I would not change it at all.
Okay. Okay. All right. Would you like to add anything else, Adam?
No, I think that's about it. And like I said earlier, where I'm saying, expand horizons. I mean, obviously, for somebody who is uncomfortable with a homosexual protagonist, there are still plenty of games you can play
Totally
that don't
true.
have that. So I mean, yeah, I think games are for everyone, and I think we should really embrace variety, because I think we should still have things that make us comfortable, because obviously games are designed for relaxing, right? Uh, so yeah, there is an argument that we should have some games that are just like, this is my comfort zone, I feel great. But as a form of art, I do think games should challenge people at times as well. So
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, and as Adam said, record. We have set a record for the longest episode ever.
yay.
We will try to be more brief in future because that is the point of our show. We want to give you all this amazing news, gaming, topic stuff in as short a form factor as possible. Thank you for tuning in today so much. It has been an exciting show. Just to
And
remind
to be
everybody,
fair, politics is a topic that does need to be embellished a little bit longer. So other
of
topics
course,
might not have to go as long.
of course. Friday's show will be we're going to prepare at 9:30 a.m. Taipei time. We should be on time for 10 a.m. Friday Taipei time or 10 p.m. Thursday night Eastern Standard Time. So please do tune in. And Friday will be our special gaming only show. It is a holiday in Taiwan. It'll be October 9th, but the holiday in Taiwan is called 1010.
I am excited.
I am excited. I'd love to have a show where we just talk about games, games, games.
Yes.
All right, and thanks for tuning in again, and see you guys on Friday.
Catch you soon.